My name is Janak Patel and I am one of the executives of the Black FE Leadership Group. I want to welcome you to episode 6 of the Anti-Racism in Action livestream, which is co-produced by Black FE Leadership Group and FE News. Anti-racism is important to me because I have experienced and seen the impact of racism in my personal and professional life, both on me as an individual and on the communities in which I live and work in. Recent events have really exposed the racism in our society, and we must act now if we are to deliver a just and equal society.
Welcome to episode 6 of Anti-Racism in Action. Today we're going to be focusing on West Midlands. Janak, thank you so much for the intro, and I 100% agree with you. This is a total collaboration between the Black FE Leadership Group and FE News. You've probably met as anchors. Today we've got Stella with us on the show, and you've probably met Robin and Amajit, but Janak is the fourth member of the exec team at Black FE Leadership Group, and an incredibly lovely guy, and hopefully he'll be joining us as an anchor one day soon, because this is one of 9 episodes. My co-anchor today is Stella. Stella, I wonder if you could join us in the studio today. Hey Stella, how are you?
I'm great, Gavin. How are you?
Yeah, really, really good. We've got a really, really exciting show today, and thank you so much, Stella, for all of the hard work in bringing this all together. We've got 2 incredibly interesting principles in an incredibly interesting area. And Stella, you've been great in sharing some of the stats on this. Thank you so much for your help with this. West Midlands is really interesting for a couple of reasons. One, I'd say, if we were going to put on our FE hat, is Colleges West Midlands, which is a group of 20 colleges working very, very closely in partnership with, that's like got a combined annual income of 611 million, employ over 11,000 staff and support 252,000 students every year, and work with 12,000 employers in the region. That's incredibly interesting. I think the other interesting point is sharing some stats from ONS, or Office for National Statistics. Looking at 2020 stats for Birmingham, the resident population was 1.1 million in 2020, but the youthful age profile of Birmingham is the second largest city in the United Kingdom. London being number 1, but Birmingham is really interesting because it's a lot more ethnically diverse than London. It's predicted that Birmingham will be confirmed as a majority minority city in the 2021 census. So it's really interesting to be able to look at the region as well. Both Pat and Mike in their colleges as well, both colleges have got a majority minority student base as well. So really, really interesting of what we can sort of bring in. Stella, I know you're working with the West Midlands region really closely all the time. It'd be interesting to see what Pat and Mike have got to say around their different challenges which they got in the area. But how have you found working West Midlands yourself from Black FE Leadership sort of perspective?
For me, Gavin, it's been really interesting. I think you've taken all the
your stats,
all the things that I would have said, but it's really it's really interesting. The colleges there, the way they're working together, but also the sheer diversity of the colleges and the vibrancy of Birmingham in particular. And both colleges have affiliated with the Black FE Leadership Group. That means that they're using the 10-point plan diagnostic toolkit to bring about deep change within their colleges. So that's really exciting to see that colleges, such well-known colleges, and there are some other colleges in West Midlands that have affiliated with the Black FE Leadership Group, but to see that these leaders, courageous leaders, well-known, experienced FE people, have embraced the 10-point plan diagnostic toolkit and really want to make a difference. And for me, what's really interesting and really cool, Gavin, is you've just read out the stats for the colleges West Midlands, and see the sheer impact, the weight that they've got. Just think about the difference all these colleges could make to anti-racism, acting together. And that for me is really interesting.
Yeah, really good point. I wonder if we could bring in our guests. So it's Pat and Mike, and I wonder when you do come, if you could maybe explain your role on college. And so Pat, I wonder if you could join us. Mike, I wonder if you could join us too. Hi guys, how are you? So Pat, did you want to? You got it behind you. Did you want to explain your your role and the college and the such?
Okay, all right. I'm Pat Cavallo, and I'm the principal and CEO for Birmingham Metropolitan College, and I joined in June, so I'm quite new still. It doesn't feel that way, but but quite new. So for me, it's being part of Birmingham again, because I was born in Birmingham as well, is just a real opportunity to kind of make a difference. And I want to do it in a way that actually serves the communities in Birmingham.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Mike, did you want to explain your role in college?
Yeah, I'm principal of Southern City College, Birmingham. There were 13 colleges in Birmingham once upon a time, and bit by bit they've all merged. So I think Pat and I are running the two key colleges. Like Pat, and I was actually saying earlier on, I was born in inner city Birmingham and know Birmingham very well. And it's great to have another colleague principal right on my doorstep who actually knows and believes in Birmingham, which is great. So yeah, for me, it's something which I've lived and breathed all my life.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And
Kevin, can I jump in there? I think the other thing that's really interesting is that these are two well-respected leaders, very experienced in FE. One black male colleague, black woman. On the same show, Mike has been principal there for a long time, so he's got that knowledge of having been principal there. Pat has got also knowledge and experience with fresh eyes. So what we've got here is a great opportunity for diverse thinking and on the show. So I'm really pleased.
Yeah, I'm really pleased. And I think today is all about solutions and sharing ideas. And like we've found, there's a theme coming through over and over and over again. Not everyone's got all the answers, but collectively we can work together to inspire each other to come up with different areas of change. And everyone very soon will be going to Birmingham to experience the Association of Colleges annual conference as well. So enjoying the delights of Broad Street and the ICC very soon. Could we maybe set the scene? Because I haven't had to do it for 18 months, but I'll be coming back to Birmingham for AOC, for example, and I probably see a little stretch of Birmingham and the West Midlands, and I'm sort of helicoptered in, out I go again, training and helicopter out. But what is the main challenges and opportunities for the West Midlands region at the moment around, particularly thinking around FE and anti-racism? Pat, I didn't know if you could maybe share your sort of views as to what's the main challenge and opportunities at the moment for the region.
I'm not sure the challenges have changed a great deal over over the last decade or so. I think people would acknowledge that for particular communities, in and around Birmingham. So I think that is the biggest challenge, and I suppose. But having said that, and certainly now making contact as a new principal with community organisations and with different different charitable groups and so on within Birmingham, it's clear to me that as a college we've got more to do. And I see that as a genuine opportunity, and particularly, working, with either, with Southern City or other colleges as well. I'm interested in collaboration and doing it, for the right reasons. So for me, I see there are just genuine opportunities of working properly, I think. With community organisations that actually really do help individuals kind of see the difference that FE colleges can and do make. But the other part of that, in terms of the continued challenge, is not just about getting people to actually, it's for us as colleges to be out there in the community, not just for us to be in our in our colleges, and expecting everybody to come to us. It's for us to be out there. And I know Mike has been doing this for a lot longer Southern City been doing this for a lot longer than Birmingham Met has in a concerted way. And so it's about that, but it's also the other end of this. It's about the outcomes for our students and actually making sure that we are working properly with our employers around the recruitment or of our students, whether that's recruitment after they going to, I suppose in universities, going to university, but I'm talking about directly into employment and what good employment kind of looks like as well. I think that I think is probably the biggest challenge for us when we're thinking about the young people in and around Birmingham.
Yeah, no, that's great. Mike, I wonder if you could, sort of share your views on the opportunities and challenges for the West Midlands. It's really interesting, both of you, living and breathing, Birmingham. Mike, I know you've been enrolled for a really long time, but also been integral in the different elements around colleges West Midlands are bringing that all together as well, and around unifying the different parts of FE as well. So it'd be really interesting to hear your view outside of the college as well as to like the whole region.
Yeah, I mean, taking that last point first, bringing all the colleges together, and I think it is unique still within the country. We work very, very closely together, and building that level of trust between larger colleges has been quite challenging. Within Birmingham and the Birmingham Solihull area, we've always had a really, really close working relationship, and obviously Pat said she's new, but it's as though we've been together for a long time because we're already working really closely together. But I think we have shared views and shared values within FE. In terms of the challenges, I think the issue is that what we see is high level issues, and we miss the fact that there's some really significant level of complexity underneath. So, for example, we're a massive college. We spread across the whole of Birmingham, and we only work in Birmingham, although obviously we cover the West Midlands generally. But if you look at certain parts of the city, I mean, we've got pockets of different communities, different levels of employment, massive issues generally about employment within the city. But if you look, you've got certain parts of the city that are predominantly white. You've got certain parts of the city that will be predominantly Asian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, and Muslim. Certain parts of the city which will be African, Caribbean, and some parts of the city which are mixed. And I think there are different issues. One, you mentioned about the young nature of Birmingham. Well, interestingly, it's not universal, because if you look in the south of the city, in the predominantly white areas, the 16 to 19 numbers are going down. They are nationally, and they're going up significantly greater in some of the inner city areas. One of the big things for me in terms of challenges, I think the point you made to begin with, which is we are very much predominantly majority colleges. Well, that in itself raises an issue about what is happening with education within the sector generally, because it means there's an imbalance somewhere else. And I think that's something that generally and structurally we do need to do. Obviously, we're trying to make up some of the parts, but we can't deal with all of it. FE has a major place, but it does need a broader spread in terms of what we're trying to do and do educationally, so that everybody's getting. We level the playing field, but actually there needs to be structural changes in different parts, so that some of the things that we're doing are actually dealt with at an earlier point and dealt with in a different way.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. This is all around anti-racism in action. So I wonder if you could share some of the things which you're both doing within your colleges, but also in collaboration to be sort of being proactive and being in purposeful and looking at diversity. Pat, I know you're new in role, but you've obviously understands the region really well, and but you're doing some really cool things right now as well. So I didn't know if you could share some of the things that you're doing at the moment at BMET.
Okay. All right. Well, we've only just started actually, so in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So it's something that we're kind of going to be rolling out with all our staff. But kind of working with the Black FE Leadership Group, we've started to engage with our governors, because we want our governors to lead our action plan going forward, and also working. Giving our senior leadership, the opportunity of really hearing about the lived experiences of our BAME staff. And I think that probably was the most one of the most rewarding things that we've done in the last 2 or 3 weeks, which was kind of certainly opened up a real kind of thoughts about our next steps and how we're going to take things forward. So those are some of the things, and I suppose for me the biggest thing that came out of that, in terms of being able to hear what our staff, and indeed should be hearing what our students are saying on this as well, is about the safe spaces that we want for them we need them to have. And it's, I suppose, really the biggest thing for me around anti-racism is that when you say that, people either kind of get rabbit in the headlights look about their face as soon as you mention you say it, because they're not actually hearing what you're trying to say anti-racism is about. And for me, it's about fairness. It's about that equity, and it's not about favoritism, because I think actually that's what people think the actions are going to be about, and it's not about that at all. It has to be about fairness, and how everybody is allowed to have that narrative and that narrative heard, so that we can actually make sure that the college is actually a better place for both our students and for our staff. So that's the starting point that we're coming through in terms of why we're engaging through the Black FE Leadership Group, in this way. But my biggest thing is how do we engender as a culture, that there are safe spaces and you can talk with openness, and to be heard, but also to understand that you as an individual, whether you are a BAME member of staff or a student or not, that you have a responsibility for your own actions and for how you actually are with other people, and how you actually hear they are. So I think critical thinking, and the use of what the Black FE Leadership call the SALT framework for us I think is going to play a very important part of what we do, and it fits very nicely with something that we're now engaged in, in the college, and that's looking at high performing teams. Because for me, what's behind a high-performing team is actually how we support our staff, how staff are actually recruited into the college, how we then actually, develop them, as much as we're trying to develop all our students to actually do the best, to be the best that they can. And so therefore that means looking at what we're doing, our processes, our systems, just to make sure that they are actually doing the right thing from an anti-racist perspective, so that we can actually embed that, across. Because this is not about doing a few actions here and there. It's, that you kind of forget about in the future. It's trying to, do something in a very systematic and supportive way.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Stella, I wonder if you could...
Go on, Gavin.
No, go on. You go for it, Stella. I was going to ask you to on a point, but you go for it.
Okay. I was going to ask you, Pat, because it's really, really interesting how it is that your governors are really behind the work that you're doing with anti-racism, and wonder, and in particular, your chair, Sir Dexter Hart, was in your college. You invited us to your college, was it last week? Really struck by how it is that you, as a new principal, could have galvanized and your governors a lot this journey, which is not an easy one. And they're so behind, and Sir Dexter is really passionate about the work. Have you got any tips for principals generally who are sort of like don't know how to approach their governing body?
I think that's it's a hard question. Well, it's not a hard question, because actually the governors were already there. So I really do need to say that. I was not knocking on a hard door that was not going to open, that wasn't already open. It was absolutely already open, and it was just and for me, it's also about being being part of Birmingham. How you can be a college in Birmingham, and I'm sure Mike will say this as well, and not have governors that understand, who our students are, and indeed our staff, would be really odd. So I didn't actually think about whether or not there would be significant issues around being able to talk about this, because I feel very strongly that it's part of Birmingham. We need to make it work, is more to the point. So I don't think I've got any tips, I'm afraid, on that, because I felt I had already a real open door.
Which is a really good thing to have, isn't it? Really.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Mike, I wonder if you could share some of your experiences of being proactive in anti-racist sort of strategy in the college, and then I wanted to ask you a backup question after that around your experience of working in the wider network of colleges across West Midlands as well. But first of all, I wonder if we could look at your own college itself.
Yeah. I mean, we've obviously grown quite significantly. So we're the biggest college in the region now, and that's come about largely because of us, for various reasons, having to merge with other colleges locally because of issues they've had. I think there are a couple of things I'd like to say. The first one is that, and from a personal point of view, for me, it's not about having wonderful written documents and statements and strategic plans which spell all this out. And very often, I don't think ours probably stack up as well as some other colleges, but it is about real action. And for me, that's the most important thing. It's a little bit like Ofsted, you can have all the written procedures around, but if you're not doing the right thing, then it's pointless. So for me, it's about what we really do. And it's about creating a culture. And this applies across the board generally. As Pat said, we've got a governing body that's totally on board. But it doesn't happen by accident. All these things don't happen by accident. So if you look at companies and business around the region, you look at colleges around the region, they do not all reflect the locality. Now, my college does. Now, I think that is a key statement, apart from the other, and it's not something where we do as a statement. It's because if you're going to have proper diversity and if you're going to deal with all these issues, you've got to live and breathe it. It's got to be real. And you've got to create an environment and a culture where it is real. And if you've got a particular organisation that looks is not the way it should be, then you're going to not necessarily attract the right people, because people are not going to come to something where they don't feel at home, they don't feel comfortable. What we have had, and it's interesting the other way around, you said about the minority majority. I mean, at the moment, one of the issues I've got is to attract more white students in, because this is an imbalance that way around. But from the point of view of what we've done, my governors are totally on board. So we actually scrutinise and look at everything. Now, it's about positive action throughout, not positive discrimination. You don't need it if you get it in place. The other thing you have to remember is sometimes if you're doing it properly, it brings about anomalies and you have things which don't quite look right. I think Stella summed it up before. You've got a black woman and a white man talking to you now. Can we bring about those changes? Yes, we can. It doesn't need to have any stereotypically a particular person, but you do need to make sure there are adequate examples, role models, and action being taken. So I think somebody might look at me as a white man and think, well, what can you do about it? But if you look at my college and you look at the track record, you'd have a very different view about what can be achieved. And I think it is about really, making that sort of difference. And we, as a college, have not only done it as a college, but we've made that point quite publicly outside. Many years ago, before there were lots of funding changes and changes from government policy, we used to operate massively in local communities, and it meant that we were right in the middle of it all. We still do that, but we can't have local access centres anymore. We have to be a lot more focused on our campuses. So I have staff that actually work out in local communities. I spend significant amounts of time out in local communities, and what we're now able to do is to work with a lot of big organisations in terms of employment, because one of the key things I would say with all of this is employment, and getting into employment is a big issue. Because if you want to see things which will really exacerbate racism, unemployment will do that, and those inequalities will do that, and it is unequal in terms of what goes on. So we've got people like HS2 who will come to us because they've got targets, and we tick those boxes. Now, we don't tick boxes purely and simply because of the students that we attract in the areas we work in. We bring those students in. So I've been able to work and persuade people like HS2, people like Worcester Bosch, National Express, big employers, to open up collaborative centres with us. So they are recruiting from the very areas that we bring our students in, which means they are then taking students in from those communities that otherwise wouldn't necessarily get into jobs. So it's about bringing all these things back, which we can do. And yes, I'd love to argue about funding and everything else, but I think there's that's just an excuse for people. I mean, we can make the difference, or you can sit back, have an easy life, and say, well, we'll just let it go on as it is, and I'll do my job and and whatever. Well, that's not what some of us are about, and I know that's certainly not what Pat's about. It's certainly not what I'm about. So I think what we have been able to achieve has been great, but I think we kid ourselves if we think it's enough. We've got significant amounts still to do. And it is about, I think, bringing a lot of people together. So the College of West Midlands bit is a way that we can have an influence, a greater influence across the board, because colleges like ours, we're big colleges, we stand for certain things, and we have a particular makeup. Well, no one can argue it's not possible in my area. If they serve the same as we do, it is possible, and we can demonstrate how.
Yeah, it's really truly serving your community, isn't it? It's serving the local employers, it's serving your local community, making those into learners. I just think it's really, really inspiring. With I can't believe we're nearly out of time. I don't know how it happens on these episodes; they just disappear. And I think it's just these inspiring stories and inspiring ways that people are making impactful change. If you could dream and dream big, and you could think of one point better. To think of an action point around anti-racism, Pat, what would you want that one point to be and that one dream to be?
I think for me, it's got to be around working more with employers to really see our students as their talent pool, because that's how we're going to help the economy, within the West Midlands. And I think to do that to do that across, Colleges West Midlands. And with the combined authority. I mean, I know we're all kind of aiming for that, but I actually think looking at this from an anti-racist point of view is really, really important. In order to ensure that we are really getting people into a lifetime of careers.
Yeah, no, that's really, really, really good point. Mike, what would you want to have as your dream action point?
Right, it's a dream action point. Mine would be education and knowledge, and by that I don't mean education to what we do. I mean getting the understanding, the knowledge of people, of community, everything else. Because if you meet someone, you get to know them really, really well, and you understand what it's all about, you understand what they're about. Racism goes out the window. Racism is generally built out of bigotry, lack of understanding, all sorts of stereotypical things which are not real, and perceptions. If we could actually somehow educate our local populations and get that understanding around, and they just in their brain they could actually understand what it's all about and understand other people's positions, it would all go away. I think the other thing is to roll this out, because we're talking about things within a city, and in cities I think we're doing a pretty good job. Move 25 miles away and all of a sudden you have a different world, and the things we're talking about don't hold good any longer. And that, so I think it is about trying to somehow get that, that mindset, that understanding, that knowledge, because the moment you do, and even people I've seen that can be prone to racism, and this is not a black-white issue. I mean, the racism we've had over the years has been probably the worst examples have been between Hindus and Pakistanis and Bangladeshis, and Indians and Pakistanis, rather than a black-white issue. But if you understand all the things that are going on, it is a really complex issue. If people understood it, I don't think we would have anywhere near the sort of issues we've got now.
Yeah,
it is a dream, I'm afraid.
No, well, you've got a dream to, every journey starts with a step, and that sort of, if you can start with a dream, then, let's try to make it a reality. Stella, what would you want to see?
Oh, my dream is just listening to two inspirational leaders here. My dream is making the most of an ethnically diverse Birmingham and West Midlands. And these two leaders here are inspiring that, helping to drive that, and bringing the combined authority on board as well. And that will touch the city spaces as well as those spaces that Mike has referred to, who are not doing such a great job. That's my dream.
Yeah, no, really, really cool. I know you're going to ask me, Gavin, what's your dream?
Gavin, what's your
I'm really inspired by the way that the colleges are all working together. And I think for me, for a dream, I'd love to see that rolled out across the rest of the country. Now, I know there's challenges with that, but we're dreaming. So I'd love to see that. And I'd love then to be able to see the combined approach of all of FE be able to work together across all of the regions to be able to make impactful change, purposeful, to be able to make that to communities, to employers. And I think, that's my dream. I'd love to see that. I think West Midlands, obviously, you're living it, you guys, Mike and Pat. It isn't all going to be like rosy, and there's going to be times when there's going to be challenges, but I'd love to see more of that. I think that would be absolutely amazing. Our time's gone. And thank you everyone for joining us today. It goes in a blink of an eye, these sessions. I think there's so much we can do. The challenges are so big, but you've got to dream. You've got to start with journeys. You've got to work collaboratively. And I just hope everyone, audience, that you feel inspired. And I know Mike and Pat would love to reach out to you. AOC isn't far away. All these different people are all reachable in a couple of days' time. So, audience, I hope you enjoyed today. Stella, thank you so much. This is a total collaboration between Black FE Leadership Group and FE News. Thank you for putting together a really, really great episode again. Thank you to Team FE News. Thank you, Leah, for making all the magic happen in the background. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Finley, for making it all, bringing it all together. We will see you next week for episode 7. I can't believe these are disappearing so fast. And I hope that you feel as inspired as what I do from today. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your time and inspiring so many people to make impactful change. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Gavin.
Thank you.